The sky above Earth was dark, not because of night, but because of the storm brewing high above. The air smelled faintly of burning metal, a reminder of what humanity had already lost. For decades, people on Earth had worked hard to rebuild after centuries of environmental collapse. They had managed to create new cities, new technologies, and even a fragile peace among themselves. But now, something far worse than any natural disaster loomed over them high above the planet. An alien fleet hung ominously in orbit. It wasn't just one ship, it was hundreds, maybe thousands, all glowing with cold blue lights that pierced through the clouds like eyes watching prey. These weren't friendly visitors. This was the Vortic Dominion, a ruthless empire known across the galaxy for its cruelty and hunger for conquest. And they had come for Earth. Commander Elena Vasquez stood at the edge of the command center, staring up at the massive screens displaying images of the alien ships. Her hands were clenched into fists behind her back, though no one could see it. She had spent years training for moments like this, but nothing could have prepared her for the sheer size of the enemy fleet. Each ship was bigger than any structure humans had ever built, and there were so many of them. "Commander," said a voice behind her. It belonged to Dr. Elias Kane, a scientist who looked out of place in the military bunker. His glasses were slightly crooked, and his lab coat was wrinkled, as if he'd been running around non-stop for days. "We need to act fast." Elena turned to face him, her sharp brown eyes locking onto his nervous ones. "What do you suggest, Doctor?" "We've got less than 24 hours before they make their move." Kane hesitated, then gestured toward a holographic display on the table between them. It showed a blueprint of something called Project Prometheus, a weapon unlike anything humanity had ever created. "It's our only chance," he said. "If we can activate Prometheus, we might stand a fighting chance against them." Before Elena could respond, alarms blared throughout the room. Everyone froze, their heads snapping toward the main screen. A transmission flickered to life, showing the face of Warlord Krithox, leader of the Vortic Dominion. His skin was pale gray, his eyes glowed red, and his voice echoed with a deep, menacing tone that sent chills down everyone's spines. "Humans," he began, his words translated automatically by Earth systems. "You have survived longer than most species in this quadrant. That ends today. Surrender your world, or face annihilation." The message repeated itself over and over until Elena finally raised her hand to cut the audio. Silence fell over the room, broken only by the sound of heavy breathing. No one spoke. No one dared to. Finally, Captain Jacques Rourke stepped forward. He was tall and muscular, with a cocky grin that somehow never seemed out of place, even in moments like this. "So, what's the plan, Commander? Are we rolling over, or are we giving these bastards hell?" Elena didn't answer right away. Instead, she walked over to the map of Earth projected onto another screen. Cities blinked in red where the Vortag had already begun probing attacks, testing Earth's defenses, weakening key points. It was clear they weren't planning to negotiate. They wanted domination, plain and simple. "We fight," Elena said firmly, turning back to face her team. "We've spent too long picking ourselves up from the ashes to let some alien tyrant take everything away. If they want Earth, they'll have to burn it out of our hands." Her words sparked a fire in the room. Soldiers straightened their backs, technicians typed faster on their keyboards, and even Kane seemed more determined than before. But deep down, everyone knew how dire the situation was. The Vortic were advanced beyond anything humanity had faced before. Their ships were faster, stronger, and deadlier. Even Earth's best fighters wouldn't last long against such overwhelming odds as the hours ticked by. Preparations intensified. Elena worked tirelessly to coordinate Earth's defenses, calling upon every available resource. Fighter jets were scrambled, ground troops were mobilized, and civilians were evacuated from major cities. Meanwhile, Kane and his team raced against time to finish Project Prometheus. Without it, humanity's chances of survival were slim to none. But the Vortic weren't waiting patiently. Small scout ships descended from the fleet, targeting orbital stations and communication hubs. Explosions lit up the night sky as satellites burned and crashed back to Earth. Panic spread quickly among the population, fueled by news reports and social media posts showing the destruction unfolding above Dot in the midst of the chaos. Captain Rourke led his squadron on a daring mission to intercept one of the scout ships. Flying sleek experimental fighters, they dodged plasma blasts and retaliated with everything they had. It was a small victory. They managed to destroy the scout, but it came at a cost. 2 pilots didn't return, their names added to the growing list of casualties. Back at the command center, Elena received updates from every corner of the globe. Some regions were holding steady, while others were collapsing under the pressure. She felt the weight of responsibility pressing down on her shoulders, but she refused to give in to despair. Humanity had faced extinction once before, during a previous alien invasion centuries ago. Back then, they had barely survived. This time, she vowed, things would be different by dawn. The reality of the situation became painfully clear. The Vortic weren't just testing Earth's defenses. They were systematically dismantling them. Every base attacked, every satellite destroyed, brought humanity closer to defeat. Yet despite the odds, hope remained alive. It flickered in the eyes of soldiers preparing for battle, in the determination of scientists working around the clock, and in the hearts of ordinary citizens refusing to give up Dot as the sun rose over a scarred and battered planet. Elena stood once again in the command center, gazing up at the alien fleet. She knew the coming days would be the hardest humanity had ever faced. But she also knew one thing for certain. If the Vortic thought they could crush the human spirit, they were about to learn just how wrong they were. The sun had barely risen when Commander Elena Vasquez stepped into the command center. The room buzzed with activity. Soldiers shouted orders. Technicians tapped furiously on their keyboards, and holographic maps flickered with updates from across the globe. Earth was preparing for war, but the tension in the air felt heavier than ever. Everyone knew the Vortic weren't going to wait much longer. Their fleet still loomed above the planet like a shadow, growing darker with each passing hour. Elena moved quickly, checking reports and issuing commands. She spoke with urgency, her voice steady but firm. "We need more fighters in Sector 7, she said to one officer. "And tell the engineers to reinforce the defense grid around New Shanghai. We can't let them take another city." Her words were met with nods and quick responses. People trusted her. They had no choice. If anyone could lead humanity through this nightmare, it was Elena Vasquez. But even she couldn't hide the worry etched onto her face. The Vortic had already proven they were ruthless. Cities burned, satellites fell, and thousands of lives were lost in the first wave of attacks. And that was just the beginning. Dr. Elias Kane sat hunched over his desk in a corner of the room, surrounded by wires, tools, and glowing screens. His hands trembled as he worked on Project Prometheus, the weapon humanity was counting on to turn the tide. It wasn't ready, yet not fully, but time was running out. Every second counted. He glanced up occasionally, watching Elena move between stations, her presence commanding respect. She reminded him why he kept pushing forward, even when failure seemed inevitable. "Doctor!" A young technician rushed over, holding a tablet. "We've got a problem with the power core. It's overheating again." Kane sighed, rubbing his temples. I know. Just give me a minute." He turned back to the machine in front of him, muttering under his breath. "Come on, work." Meanwhile, Captain Jax Rourke stood outside the command center, leaning against the wall and staring at the sky. His squadron had returned from their mission hours ago, but he couldn't shake the feeling of emptiness inside him. Two pilots hadn't come back. Two friends. Two human beings who now existed only as memories. He clenched his fists, trying to push away the guilt and anger. There would be time to mourn later, if there was a later. "Captain," someone called behind him. It was Lieutenant Ava Morales, one of his most trusted pilots. Her helmet was tucked under her arm, and her dark hair was damp with sweat. "You okay?" Rourke forced a grin. "Yeah, sure. Why wouldn't I be?" Ava didn't smile back. She knew him too well. "Don't do that. Don't pretend everything's fine. We're all scared, Jax, but we're still here. Still fighting." He nodded slowly, appreciating her honesty. "Thanks, Ava. I needed that." Inside the command center, things were heating up. Reports poured in from every direction. The Vortic had launched another series of probing attacks, targeting critical infrastructure. Power plants went offline, communication towers collapsed, and entire regions plunged into darkness. Panic spread faster than wildfire, fueled by news broadcasts showing images of burning cities and fleeing civilians. Elena slammed her fist on the table, startling everyone nearby. "Enough!" she shouted. "We are not losing control. Not today. Not ever. Tell me what we've got left." One of her officers hesitated before speaking. "Commander, we've lost almost half our orbital defenses. Ground forces are stretched thin, and supplies are running low. If the Vortic launch a full-scale attack, they will," Elena interrupted. "And we'll be ready. Pull every available unit back to defend the major population centers. Fortify those positions. We can't afford to lose any more ground." As orders were relayed and troops scrambled to follow them, Dr. Kane finally made progress. He stood abruptly, wiping grease off his hands. "It's stable," he announced, drawing attention from across the room. "Prometheus is operational at least partially. We can use it in its current state, but it won't be easy." Elena hurried over, her eyes wide with hope. "What does that mean exactly?" "It means we have a chance," Kane replied. "But activating it prematurely comes with risks. The energy output could destabilize the surrounding area. Worse, if the Vortic detect it, they'll target us immediately." "We don't have a choice," Elena said firmly. "Get it ready. We'll figure out the rest on the fly." While preparations continued, chaos erupted elsewhere. Civilians flooded the streets, desperate to escape the advancing alien threat. In some places, riots broke out as people fought over limited resources. Others banded together, forming makeshift militias to protect their homes. Humanity's resilience shone brightly amid the destruction, but it wasn't enough to stop the Vortic. Late that night, Captain Rourke led his squadron on another mission. This time, their goal was to disable a massive Vortic drone hovering over Europe. The plan was risky, a suicide run disguised as a retreat, but it was the only way to get close enough to strike. "Stay sharp, everyone," Rourke said over the comms as they approached the target. "Once we're in range, hit it hard and fast. Don't stop until it's down." The battle was intense. Plasma bolts streaked through the sky, lighting up the darkness like fireworks. Fighters screamed as they dodged enemy fire, weaving through explosions and debris. For a moment, it seemed impossible. The drone was heavily armored and nearly indestructible. But then, something incredible happened. Ava spotted a weak point assay's small panel on the underside of the drone and relayed the information to the team. "There! Aim for that spot." With precision and teamwork, they unleashed everything they had. Missiles struck true, tearing through the panel and causing a chain reaction that engulfed the drone in flames. Cheers erupted over the comms as the wreckage plummeted toward the ground. But victory came at a cost. One of the fighters was hit during the final assault, spinning out of control before disappearing into the horizon. Rourke clenched his jaw, forcing himself to focus. Good job, everyone. Let's head home. Back at the command center, Elena watched the footage of the successful mission with a mixture of pride and sorrow. Progress was being made, but the price was far too high. Lives were being lost every hour, every minute. How much longer could humanity hold on? Just then, Dr. Kane approached her, his expression grim. "Commander, we've detected increased activity from the Vortic fleet. They're mobilizing. Whatever they're planning, it's happening soon." Elena took a deep breath, steeling herself for what lay ahead. "Then we'd better be ready. Gather, everyone. It's time to make our stand." As dawn broke over a battered and bruised Earth, humanity prepared for the fight of their lives. Soldiers checked their weapons, engineers fortified defenses, and civilians prayed for salvation. The Vortic thought they could crush humanity, but they underestimated one thing: the unbreakable spirit of a species that refused to give up. Deep in the heart of the command center, Project Prometheus hummed softly, waiting to unleash its devastating power. It was a symbol of hope, a reminder that even in the darkest moments, humanity could rise above the odds. And rise they would. The sky above Earth was no longer blue. It had turned a sickly shade of orange, lit up by the fires of burning cities and streaked with trails of smoke from countless explosions. The Vortic fleet moved closer, their ships blotting out the sun as they prepared for their final assault. Humanity's time was running out. Commander Elena Vasquez stood at the edge of the command center, her eyes scanning the chaos unfolding on the screens before her. Reports poured in from all corners of the globe's cities falling, defenses crumbling, and civilians fleeing in terror. The Vortic weren't holding back anymore. Their full-scale attack had begun. "Commander!" An officer shouted, pointing to one of the monitors. A massive dreadnought, larger than any ship humanity had ever seen, descended toward North America. Its weapons glowed ominously, ready to unleash destruction on a scale never witnessed before. Elena's jaw tightened. Divert every available fighter to intercept that thing. We can't let it reach the surface. Captain Jax Rourke heard the order through his earpiece as he suited up for another mission. His squadron had barely returned from their last battle, but there was no time to rest. The Vortic were relentless, and humanity couldn't afford to lose momentum now. "All right, listen up," Rourke said, addressing his pilots. "This is going to be ugly. That dreadnought is loaded with weapons, and it's got shields stronger than anything we've faced. But we've got something they don't expect: guts. Stick together, hit hard, and don't stop until it's down." The pilots nodded, their faces pale but determined. They knew the odds were against them, but none of them hesitated. As they climbed into their fighters, engines roared to life, and the squadron launched into the sky. Meanwhile, Dr. Elias Kane worked feverishly to stabilize Project Prometheus. The weapon was operational, but only partially. Activating it too soon could destabilize the entire region, potentially killing thousands of humans along with the Vortic. Yet waiting too long might mean losing the war altogether. "Doctor, we need that thing ready," Elena said, stepping into the lab. Her voice was calm, but her eyes betrayed her urgency. "I'm doing everything I can," Kane replied, his hands trembling as he adjusted wires and circuits. "But if we use it now, the backlash could—" "I know the risks," Elena interrupted. "But if we don't act soon, there won't be anyone left to save. Do whatever it takes." Kane swallowed hard and nodded. He didn't like it, but he understood. This wasn't just about science anymore. It was about survival. Back in the skies, Captain Rourke led his squadron toward the dreadnought. The alien ship loomed ahead, its surface bristling with cannons and turrets. Plasma bolts streaked through the air as the Vortic opened fire, forcing the human fighters to dodge and weave in a deadly dance. "Stay close," Rourke shouted over the comms. "We've got one shot at this." The fighters regrouped, forming a tight formation as they approached the dreadnought. Missiles flew from their wings, striking the ship's shields and causing ripples of energy to spread across its surface. For a moment, it seemed impossible to penetrate. Then, Lieutenant Ava Morales spotted a weak point, a small gap in the shielding near the ship's rear thrusters. "There!" she yelled. "Focus your fire on that spot." The squadron followed her lead, unleashing everything they had. Explosions rocked the dreadnought as its shields faltered, exposing its vulnerable hull. With one final push, the fighters unleashed a barrage of missiles, tearing through the armor and igniting a chain reaction inside the ship. The dreadnought erupted in a blinding flash of light, sending shockwaves rippling through the atmosphere. Debris rained down, and cheers erupted over the comms. But the victory came at a terrible cost. 2 fighters had been destroyed during the attack, their pilots lost forever. Rourke clenched his teeth, forcing himself to stay focused. There was no time to mourn. The Vortic fleet was still advancing, and Earth's defenses were crumbling faster than ever. On the ground, civilians fought alongside soldiers, using whatever weapons they could find to hold off the invading forces. In Europe, a group of engineers used hacked alien tech to disable a swarm of drones. In Asia, farmers armed with makeshift explosives defended their villages against monstrous mechs. Everywhere, humanity refused to give up. Inside the command center, Dr. Kane finally completed his adjustments to Project Prometheus. "It's ready," he announced, his voice shaking with exhaustion. "But we'll need to get it into position quickly. Once activated, it won't discriminate between friend and foe." Elena nodded. "Understood. Get it loaded onto the transport. We'll deploy it directly into the heart of the Vortic fleet." As the weapon was prepped for launch, the Vortic launched a devastating counterattack. Massive beams of energy lanced down from their ships, obliterating entire cities in seconds. The death toll rose exponentially, and panic swept across the planet. People screamed, cried, and prayed as the end seemed closer than ever. But amidst the despair, hope flickered. Civilians rallied around soldiers, offering food, shelter, and support. Scientists worked tirelessly to repair damaged equipment. Pilots risked their lives to buy precious seconds for the ground forces. And deep underground, Project Prometheus hummed softly, waiting to unleash its fury. Finally, the moment arrived. A transport carrying the weapon lifted off, escorted by a squadron of fighters. Captain Rourke volunteered to lead the mission, knowing it might be his last. "If this works," he said to his team, "we'll have saved Earth. If it doesn't, well, at least we'll go down swinging." The transport raced toward the Vortic fleet, dodging plasma bolts and enemy fighters. The escorts did their best to shield it, sacrificing themselves to ensure the weapon reached its target. One by one, the fighters fell, but the transport pressed on at the last possible second. The transport released Project Prometheus, sending it hurtling toward the center of the Vortic fleet. Back on Earth, Dr. Kane activated the weapon remotely, his fingers trembling as he pressed the button. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, a brilliant pulse of energy erupted from the weapon, spreading outward in a wave of destruction. Ships exploded, shields collapsed, and the once mighty Vortic fleet began to crumble. Cheers erupted across Earth as people watched the invaders' downfall unfold. But the victory was bittersweet. The transport and its escorts were gone, lost in the blast. Cities lay in ruins and millions had perished. Yet despite the devastation, humanity endured. Soldiers embraced one another, tears streaming down their faces. Civilians emerged from hiding, looking up at the sky with a mix of relief and sorrow. Down in the command center, Commander Elena Vasquez stood silently, watching the aftermath. She felt a surge of pride, an overwhelming sense of loss. So many had died to make this moment possible. But as she looked around at the faces of those who remained, she knew one thing for certain. humanity would never give up. Not now, not ever. Far above, the remnants of the Vortic fleet retreated, leaving Earth battered but alive. The battle wasn't over yet, but for the first time in days, hope burned brightly in the hearts of survivors. The Vortic fleet was retreating, but their war wasn't over. The pulse from Project Prometheus had destroyed a large part of their forces, but enough ships remained to continue the fight. Warlord Krithox, furious at the unexpected resistance, vowed to crush Earth once and for all. He ordered his troops to descend to the surface, bringing the battle directly to humanity's doorstep. Commander Elena Vasquez watched the screens in the command center as reports flooded in. The Vortic weren't just attacking cities anymore. They were deploying ground forces. Massive mechs stomped through streets, crushing buildings underfoot. Alien soldiers, armed with advanced weapons, hunted down survivors. It was clear. The Vortic wanted to erase every trace of human life. "We can't hold them back," one officer said, his voice trembling. "Their tech is too strong. We're outnumbered." Elena clenched her fists but kept her composure. "We don't need to hold them back forever," she replied. "We just need to buy time. Keep fighting. Every second counts." Across the globe, humanity fought back with everything they had. Soldiers used guerrilla tactics, striking quickly and retreating before the Vortic could respond. Civilians joined the effort, using improvised weapons and traps to slow the invaders. In some places, entire neighborhoods banded together to defend their homes, refusing to surrender even when faced with overwhelming odds. Captain Jax Rourke, though injured from the previous mission, refused to sit on the sidelines. He led a small group of pilots in hit-and-run attacks, targeting supply lines and communication hubs. Each strike weakened the Vortic, but it came at a cost. More lives were lost, more cities destroyed. Yet despite the losses, hope remained alive. In the ruins of a fallen city, Dr. Elias Kane worked tirelessly to repair and enhance Project Prometheus. The weapon had dealt a heavy blow to the Vortic fleet, but it wasn't enough to end the war. Kane knew they needed something bigger, something that could finish the job once and for all. "Doctor," Elena said, stepping into the makeshift lab. Her face was streaked with dirt, and her uniform was torn, but her eyes burned with determination. "How much longer?" Kane wiped sweat from his brow and glanced up. "A few hours, maybe less. But I'll need help. This isn't something I can do alone." Elena nodded. "You'll have it. Just tell me what you need." As Kane continued his work, the battle raged on. The Vortic launched wave after wave of attacks, pushing deeper into Earth's territory. Their mechs crushed anything in their path, while their soldiers showed no mercy. Entire towns were wiped out, leaving behind only ashes and silence. But humanity refused to break. In Europe, a group of engineers hacked into alien drones, turning them against their creators. In Asia, farmers used explosives made from scavenged materials to destroy a Vortic convoy. Even children played their part, acting as lookouts and messengers, ensuring information flowed between resistance groups. Amidst the chaos, Captain Rourke found himself leading a desperate mission to protect a key facility. Captain Rourke found himself leading a desperate mission to protect a key facility. Captain Rourke found himself leading a power plant supplying energy to the region. If the Vortic took it, they'd gain a significant advantage. Rourke's team dug in, setting up defenses around the perimeter. "This is it," he told his squad. "If we lose this place, we're done. So stay sharp and don't let them get past us." The battle was brutal. Plasma bolts tore through the air, lighting up the night sky. Soldiers shouted orders, firing until their weapons overheated. When ammunition ran low, they resorted to hand-to-hand combat, using whatever tools they could find. It was a miracle they held the line at all. Back at the lab, Dr. Kane finally completed his modifications. "It's ready," he announced, exhaustion evident in his voice. "This time, it won't just damage their fleet, it'll obliterate it." Elena nodded grimly. "Then, let's make sure it gets where it needs to go." She turned to her officers. "Prepare a transport, and assemble a team to escort it. We're not losing this chance." The transport lifted off shortly after, carrying the enhanced Project Prometheus toward the heart of the Vortic fleet. Escorting, it was a squadron of fighters, led by none other than Captain Rourke. Though battered and weary, he refused to let anyone else take the lead. "This is it, people," Rourke said over the comms. "One last push. Let's make it count." The journey was perilous. The Vortic anticipated the attack, sending swarms of fighters to intercept the transport. Explosions lit up the sky as the humans fought desperately to protect their payload. One by one, the escorts fell, their sacrifices ensuring the transport stayed on course. Inside the command center, Elena watched the battle unfold on the screens. Her heart ached with every loss, but she forced herself to stay focused. Humanity's fate rested on this final mission. Failure wasn't an option. Finally, the transport reached its destination. With seconds to spare, it released the weapon, sending it hurtling toward the Vordak flagship, their largest and most powerful ship. Back on Earth, Dr. Kane activated the weapon remotely, his hand shaking as he pressed the button. For a moment, there was silence. Then, a blinding flash of light erupted from the weapon, spreading outward in a massive wave of destruction. Ships exploded, shields collapsed, and the flagship itself broke apart, consumed by fire and debris. Cheers erupted across the planet as people watched the Vortic fleet disintegrate, but the victory came at a terrible cost. The transport and its escorts were gone, lost in the blast. Cities lay in ruins, and millions had perished. Yet despite the devastation, humanity endured. Soldiers embraced one another, tears streaming down their faces. Civilians emerged from hiding, looking up at the sky with a mix of relief and sorrow. In the command center, Commander Elena Vasquez stood silently, watching the aftermath. She felt a surge of pride and an overwhelming sense of loss. So many had died to make this moment possible. But as she looked around at the faces of those who remained, she knew one thing for certain: humanity would never give up. Not now, not ever. Far above, the remnants of the Vortic fleet retreated, leaving Earth battered but alive. The battle wasn't over yet, but for the first time in days, hope burned brightly in the hearts of survivors. The Vortic fleet was gone, destroyed by humanity's final desperate act. But Earth wasn't celebrating yet. The planet was scarred and broken, its cities reduced to rubble, its people scattered and grieving. Fires still burned across the land, and smoke darkened the skies. It felt like the end of the world, but it wasn't. Humanity had survived. Barely. Commander Elena Vasquez stood outside the command center, staring at the horizon. The air smelled of ash and burnt metal, but beneath it all, she could faintly smell rain. A storm was coming, not just in the sky, but in her heart as well. She thought about everyone who had died. Soldiers, civilians, friends. So many lives lost, so much pain endured. And for what? To live on a shattered planet? But then she remembered something Captain Jax Rourke had once said during one of their missions. "We fight because we're human. Because giving up isn't an option." Those words echoed in her mind now, grounding her. No matter how hard things got, humanity would always find a way to rise again. Inside the command center, Dr. Elias Kane sat slumped over his desk, exhausted but alive. His glasses were askew, and his lab coat was stained with grease and sweat. He had given everything to make Project Prometheus work, and it had paid off. But the cost weighed heavily on him. Every explosion, every life lost, it all felt personal, as if he'd pulled the trigger himself. "Doctor," Elena said gently, stepping into the room. "It's over. You did it." Kane looked up, his eyes bloodshot but filled with a flicker of pride. "Did I? Or did we just trade one disaster for another?" Elena didn't answer right away. Instead, she walked over to the window and gazed out at the wreckage beyond. "Maybe both," she admitted. "But we're still here. That means something." Across the globe, survivors began to emerge from hiding. Some carried weapons, ready to defend themselves if needed. Others held hands, comforting one another as they surveyed the damage. Children cried, searching for parents who would never return. Elderly men and women knelt in prayer, thanking whatever higher power they believed in for sparing them. In Europe, a group of engineers worked tirelessly to restore power to a fallen city. They scavenged parts from destroyed alien tech, piecing together makeshift generators. In Asia, farmers returned to their fields, planting seeds in soil that had been scorched black. Even in the most devastated areas, life found a way to push forward. Meanwhile, Warlord Krithox was furious. Though his fleet had retreated, he refused to accept defeat. From aboard his personal cruiser, hidden deep within the remnants of his forces, he plotted revenge. Earth had humiliated him, and he wouldn't rest until every human was wiped from existence. "We will return," he growled to his remaining commanders. "And when we do, there will be nothing left of their pathetic species." Back on Earth, Elena knew the war wasn't truly over. The Vortic might have fled, that they would come back stronger next time. Humanity needed to prepare and fast. She gathered her officers in the command center, laying out plans for rebuilding defenses and fortifying key locations. "We've won this round," she told them, "but they'll be back. We need to be ready. Start repairing what we can and building new weapons. Train more pilots, recruit more soldiers. This isn't the end, it's just the beginning." Her words inspired hope among her team. They had faced extinction and survived. If they could do that, they could handle anything. Dr. Kane joined the meeting reluctantly, still haunted by guilt. But as he listened to Elena's plans, he realized something important. Survival wasn't enough. Humanity needed to thrive. With that thought in mind, he began sketching designs for new technologies, ways to harness alien energy, improve Earth's defenses, and ensure no one could ever threaten the planet again. Captain Jax Rourke, though battered and bruised, wasn't done fighting either. He led a small team of pilots on reconnaissance missions, searching for any signs of lingering Vordak forces. Along the way, he visited towns and villages, offering support and encouragement to those struggling to rebuild. People looked up to him, seeing not just a soldier, but a symbol of resilience. One evening, as Rourke stood atop a hill overlooking a ruined city, he spotted a young girl playing with a toy spaceship. She laughed, spinning around and pretending to battle imaginary aliens. For the first time in days, Rourke smiled. Kids like her were why they fought for the future, for the chance to dream again. As weeks turned into months, Earth slowly began to heal. New buildings rose from the ashes, powered by hybrid technology cobbled together from human ingenuity and alien scraps. Farmers replanted crops, scientists developed cleaner energy sources, and artists painted murals on walls once covered in soot. Life wasn't perfect, but it was moving forward. In the command center, Elena received reports of progress from every corner of the globe. Cities were being rebuilt, alliances were forming between nations, and morale was improving. People weren't just surviving, they were thriving. And through it all, Project Prometheus became a symbol of hope. Not because it had destroyed the enemy, but because it had shown humanity what they were capable of when united. One day, Dr. Kane approached Elena with a proposal. "What if we used what we've learned from Prometheus to build something better?" he asked. "Something that doesn't just destroy, but protects." A shield, maybe, or a network of satellites to detect threats before they reach us. Elena nodded thoughtfully. Do it. Use whatever resources you need. We can't rely on miracles forever. As Kane returned to his lab, inspired by the challenge, Elena stepped outside once more. The rain had finally arrived, washing away some of the grime and ash. She tilted her face toward the sky, letting the cool droplets fall on her skin. For the first time in months, she allowed herself to feel a glimmer of peace. Humanity had faced its darkest hour and emerged victorious. They had proven that even against overwhelming odds, they could stand tall. The scars would remain on the planet, on its people, on history itself, but so would the lessons learned. Strength wasn't measured by weapons or shields. It was measured by the courage to keep going, no matter what got far above in the depths of space. The Vortic plotted their return. But for now, Earth was safe. Its people had earned a moment to breathe, to heal, to dream of brighter days ahead. And somewhere, in the heart of humanity's spirit, a quiet promise lingered. If the Vortic came back, they would find a world ready to fight, not out of fear, but out of love for the fragile, beautiful thing called life.